Populism is sweeping across the globe, and it's changing the way we think about politics. In the last decade, populist leaders have taken power in more than 30 countries. That's a huge shift. Countries like Brazil, Hungary, and the United States have all seen their political landscapes transformed. But what exactly is driving this trend? Surprisingly, nearly 70% of people feel that traditional politicians no longer represent them. This disconnect is fueling a hunger for leaders who promise to be different. Populism thrives on this feeling, offering simple solutions to complex problems. It captures emotions, making people feel heard and understood. Here's a shocking fact: when populists take power, they often change the rules of the game. Research shows that democracies with populist leaders see a drop in civil liberties and press freedom. In fact, more than half of the world's democracies have been affected by this shift in just the last 5 years. In this video, we'll explore why populism keeps winning and what it means for you. We'll dive into the emotional strategies that connect leaders with their followers, the global spread of populism, and the impact of identity politics. You'll also learn how you can navigate this changing political landscape. Stay tuned, there's a lot to uncover. Chapter 1: The Power of Emotion: How Populism Hijacks the Heart. Populism thrives on one key thing: emotion. It's not about facts, logic, or deep policy discussions. Instead, populists tap into how people feel. They focus on things that make us angry, scared, or hopeful. Why? Because emotions motivate us more than anything else. A study by Yale University found that emotions like fear or anger can increase political engagement by up to 35%. That's a huge jump. Populists know this and use it to their advantage. For example, fear of immigrants or economic collapse becomes the rallying cry. It's not just negative emotions either. Hope for a better future or belief in a return to greatness plays a big role too. Take Donald Trump's 2016 campaign. His slogan, "Make America Great Again," wasn't about specifics. It was about nostalgia and hope. He made voters feel like they could return to a better time if they supported him. In fact, research by Harvard's Ash Center showed that Trump's supporters were primarily driven by fear of losing status and hope for change, more than by economic issues. But here's the trick: populists don't need to have a solution. They just need to connect emotionally. Once voters are hooked on feelings, logic takes a backseat. This explains why populists often reject expert advice. They know their base values emotion over expertise. Chapter 2: The New Elite: Why Populists Pretend to be Outsiders. Populism is full of irony. Leaders who are incredibly wealthy or well-connected often position themselves as outsiders. This tactic is central to their appeal. They paint a picture of themselves as the only ones willing to fight against the corrupt elite. Take Boris Johnson in the UK. Despite his elite background, Eton College, Oxford University, and a long career in politics, he styled himself as a man of the people. How? By using humor, casual language, and a bit of self-deprecation. He made people feel like he wasn't part of the usual political class, even though he absolutely was. This strategy works because people are disillusioned with traditional politicians. A 2019 Pew Research Center study found that 64% of people in Western democracies feel disconnected from their government. Populists tap into that dissatisfaction by distancing themselves from the old guard, even when they've been part of it for years. This outsider image also gives them a license to criticize the system harshly. They can say things that would get a career politician in trouble. When Trump said Washington was draining the swamp, he was painting himself as the only person outside the system who could fix it, even though he had deep connections in business and politics. Populists thrive on this contradiction. They convince voters that they're the only ones who truly understand their struggles while enjoying the privileges of wealth and power themselves. This gives them the flexibility to break the usual rules of politics and still retain support. Chapter 3: Social Media's Revolt: The Digital Weapon of Populism. Social media changed the game for populists. It's the perfect platform for short, emotional messages. Where traditional media requires depth and context, social media thrives on simplicity. This fits perfectly with populist tactics. Instead of long policy speeches, populists use platforms like Twitter or Facebook to deliver punchy, emotional soundbites. A 2021 study by the Oxford Internet Institute found that populist leaders use social media 3 times more frequently than their non-populist counterparts. Why? It's a direct line to the public, bypassing the mainstream media they often criticize. Social media allows them to control the narrative and avoid being fact-checked. Take Brazil's Jair Bolsonaro. His rise to power was largely due to his effective use of social media, especially WhatsApp. During his campaign, millions of voters were added to pro-Bolsonaro WhatsApp groups where they received constant updates, memes, and emotional appeals. This kind of viral content kept his supporters engaged and outraged. Social media also encourages the us versus them mentality that populism feeds on. Algorithms promote content that sparks strong reactions, which leads to more extreme rhetoric gaining visibility. A study by MIT showed that false information spreads on social media 6 times faster than the truth. This benefits populists, who often rely on misinformation to stoke fears or present themselves as the only solution. Populism and social media are a perfect match because both simplify complex issues into black and white terms. You're either with us or against us. There's no room for nuance, and that's exactly what makes populist messages stick. If you found these insights helpful, make sure to subscribe for more in-depth analysis on political trends that shape our world. Chapter 4: The Global Domino Effect: Why Populism is Spreading Everywhere. Populism isn't confined to one country or culture. It's a global phenomenon. What's interesting is how it spreads like a chain reaction. When one populist movement succeeds, it often inspires others around the world. For example, when Donald Trump won in 2016, it didn't just shake up the US political movements in Europe, South America, and Asia started to echo his rhetoric. Populist leaders like Hungary's Viktor Orban and Italy's Matteo Salvini started using similar language, blaming elites and migrants for their country's problems. There's a term for this: political contagion. In the same way social media posts go viral, political ideas do too. A 2017 study by Cambridge University found that populist leaders influence each other across borders, even if they don't share the same ideology. It's about the strategy, not just the message. This domino effect happens because the tactics are replicable, even in vastly different political landscapes. One key factor is the media. International news coverage brings the successes of populist leaders into focus for people in other countries. When Brexit happened, it sent shockwaves across the world. Movements in France, Germany, and even Mexico looked to the UK as proof that populist ideas could win. But it's not just about copying slogans. Populists borrow strategies from each other. A great example is the use of referendums. Brexit showed how a well-executed referendum can bypass traditional politics and give populists a direct link to the people. Following that, Italy's Salvini started calling for referendums on key issues, hoping for the same kind of success. This global spread of populism means that political trends in one country can have a direct impact on another. Whether it's trade wars, immigration policies, or cultural debates, populism's reach is long and its strategies are contagious. Chapter 5: Identity Wars: The Populist Battle Over Us vs. Them. At the heart of populism is division. Populists thrive on creating an us versus them narrative. This tactic is incredibly effective because it simplifies complex issues and gives people a clear enemy to blame for their problems. Who is us, and who is them? That depends on the country and the leader. In Europe, it's often immigrants or the EU. In the US, it can be the liberal elite, or globalists. But no matter the target, the strategy is the same. Populists make it personal. They frame the debate in terms of identity, not policy. A 2020 study by the University of Amsterdam found that identity politics is one of the most powerful tools populists use to galvanize support. When people feel their identity is under threat, whether it's their national, racial, or cultural identity, they're more likely to support extreme measures to protect it. Look at Brexit. The Leave campaign wasn't just about economic policies. It was about reclaiming British identity. The slogan, "Take Back Control," resonated deeply because it made voters feel like they were losing something important, something that made them British. This tactic also taps into a sense of victimhood. Populists convince their supporters that they're the ones being oppressed or silenced. In the US, Trump often claimed that real Americans were being ignored by the liberal media and political establishment. Viktor Orban in Hungary similarly casts Hungarians as victims of the EU's immigration policies, framing his government as the only defender of national sovereignty. By focusing on identity, populists simplify the political landscape. They turn every issue, whether it's immigration, education, or the economy, into a question of survival for the true people. This makes their rhetoric emotionally charged and hard to argue against. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth discussions on the political trends shaping our world.